We're going to go through a segment called Discover Freedom. The first time I did this, it took 2 hours, and we did it in front of 85 people. After going through this segment, 65 of the people signed up and said, hey, we want to learn more. When can we get together? That was the last meeting that I gave for 4 years. So this isn't going to be a 2-hour segment. We're actually going to get through this in about 10 minutes with different segments. So hang on, we're going to try to take this a piece at a time. But in discovering freedom, we want people to understand money. And really it begins with a base understanding of how money comes into circulation, how money works in the United States. And it's a thing that I'm quite passionate about. Quick story on the front side of this. My grandfather was the president of the hometown bank that I grew up in. And from early on, when I was just a young boy, my grandpa started giving me $2 bill and $5 bills for my birthday. And he gave me old bills from back in 1928 and 1934. And I thought it was so cool to have that old money. And my grandpa taught me about how the legal tender and how the banking system worked. And I was intrigued at a very young age. As I became a teenager and a young adult, I ran into a book called The Truth in Money book that absolutely changed my life. It was the first time I heard the word, the T word, called a trillion. So I'm going to tell a little bit about that story, but let me just start out with the basics first. Money back in the day was actually needing to be protected inside of walls, and they built moats around it because money back in the day was real, it was intrinsic, and it actually looked like the kind of money that you see on the left. You know, it was gold and silver, and it was works of art. But today, you know, money is much different. It's these investments and plans, and it's contracts, and it's quite complicated. So money over time has changed, but really, money is just a means of exchange. It truly is just whatever you'll accept for a product or service. So in our country, money is denominated in the dollar. Now, this is just a little history lesson of about 30 seconds, but do you know the definition of a dollar? You know, in our country, it's been defined in the 1792 Coinage Act. And oddly, that definition has never changed. The 1792 Coinage Act said that a dollar was a unit of silver. It was 412 and a quarter grains of silver, 9/10 fine. So what is a grain? A grain was actually a measurement. You know, for people that know about shells and gunpowder, they actually measure gunpowder in grains. So this 412 and a quarter grains of silver, 9/10 fine, is our dollar. So everybody knew that a dollar was this unit, this measurement. Well, over time, things have very much become very different for what a dollar is thought of today. If I ask people what a dollar is today, they actually grab a dollar bill and they hold it up and they say, that's a dollar. Well, quite honestly, that's not a dollar. That's a piece of paper. But what gives the dollar value today? It's our belief. It's what the government allows us to pay or the value that they allow to be received in taxation. I was thinking about the Internal Revenue Service today, and I'll get to that later. But and the world, they look at our dollar as a value. I want to take you through a quick history lesson of how the legal tender has changed. So if you'll notice this 1928 series, this was actually one my grandfather gave me. It's a $5 bill, and you see on top that it says United States note. Do you know what they all say today? See, most people don't. But if you'll take a look at a dollar bill or a $5 bill, you'll see on yours that it says Federal Reserve note. But back in the day, they actually said United States note, and they were printed by the United States Treasury. And what these pieces of paper said is that they will pay to the bearer on demand $5. See, now everybody knew that that dollar was a real silver coin. It was a coin that gave you a real value, intrinsic value. So you'd take your piece of paper to the local bank and they would give you however many dollars the piece of paper was denominated to give. So this would have given you 5 of those silver dollars, all right? So what happened since 1913? Our Congress voted that we would start using a nation's piggy bank called the Federal Reserve System. In fact, you see on top of your notes now, they say Federal Reserve Note. Well, the Federal Reserve Notes started back in 1913. This happens to be a 1934 series. And the quick story on this is this. They made them look just like the United States notes. There's very little difference. Well, why is that? Because people don't want to cause fear. The government didn't want to cause fear when they were using somebody else's money. See, this money was issued by a bank, a private bank. See, the Federal Reserve, most people think that's government. Go look it up. You see, back in the day when there used to be phone books, you wouldn't find the Federal Reserve under the United States government. You wouldn't look under U. You'd actually have to look under F. See, Federal Reserve is a private bank. And I always relate this to this. You know the nation's trucking system? Yeah, it's the Federal Express, right? No. See, the Federal Express is a private trucking company, right? But it uses the word federal. Just like the Federal Reserve Bank uses the word federal, didn't make it be a government bank. How about federal shotgun shells? Did you ever hear of those? Well, that isn't the government-issued shotgun shells. It's just the name of a company. Point is here is that it's a private banking system, and whenever our government wanted to use money that they didn't collect in taxes, they would go to this bank. First, they would vote. They would vote to raise the national debt, and then they would go to the bank and say, will you allow us a loan? And then the Federal Reserve nodded their head and said yes, and then they lent our government the money with the promise that our government could tax the citizens of the United States to collect this debt. It's a cool system. Now, that system went on for a long, long time, and it's still going on today. This story, made shorter, is that the United States Treasury was printing notes all alongside the Federal Reserve all the way up to 1971. This is a 1963 note. And what you'll notice is it says it's a United States note, but you'll also notice there's no promise to pay. You see, it just says it's $5. Oddly, the paper actually became the money. See, it used to be a coupon to go get some money, but now it is the money. This is a note that was, I think this is a 1981 series, but basically since 1971, this is what's happened. The United States doesn't print any of their own money. Every dollar that comes into circulation comes in just the way that I described it. If you ever want to read any of the books that we'll put on a little disclaimer bar on the bottom of the different books that you can read, there's tons of information that you can read about the Federal Reserve System. End of the story is this. Everybody thinks about money today as it's just paper. It's just digits. And that happened since 1971. The Federal Reserve has all power to print and loan money to our government on the backs of the citizens. Now, what does this mean? It just means that there's been a ton of debt that's been collected over time. When people lose the principles of what a country was built on, about real wealth, when they lose the idea of what is real, they lose their ability to actually have something of value. You understand that printing press has been going a long time, and there's a risk and a danger that could be even more devalued in our future. If I were holding $1 up today, would you agree with me that dollar is going to be worth less 10 years from today? Would you agree with me that dollar is going to be worth less 20 years from today? We're all nodding our head like this. We know that. But what does that mean? It's just that when you keep printing more and more and more of something that has no value, it becomes of less value. That's what it means. It's happened to over 200 countries in the world. 200 currencies in the world have went completely of no value. Think of the ruble. Think of the peso. Think of all the Confederate dollars in the U.S. They aren't worth anything other than collector items. So I'm not trying to ring a bell and saying, hey, look, we're all going broke. I'm not trying to say that. What I'm saying is that we have a system of banking today that is a debt money system. So let's take a look at this debt. I've got a chart that started way back in the 1960s. So in the 1960s, we had $292 billion of debt. that grew all the way to 380 billion by 1970. I want you to just take a look at this quick lesson over these 10-year gaps. From the 1970s and 1980s, it went from $400 billion to $900 billion. And in 1982, when I graduated from school, that's the T word that I said that I finally learned in the Truth in Money book. $1 trillion. 1982, we hit $1 trillion. I went and looked it up. I couldn't believe what it really meant. But it grew to $3 trillion by 1990, and by 2000 it was 5.6 trillion, and by 2010, 13 trillion. And 2016 it was 19 trillion. Today it's about 22 trillion, 23 trillion in there. I had said that back in 2012 when I gave this presentation, I said that we're probably going to hit 30 trillion, assuming the whole thing holds together. I'm not going to be too far off. The point is that these are huge amounts of money. So when we start looking at what does this mean? What does this mean in trying to equate how big of a problem this is? And guys, we can't fix this problem. I'm just only trying to alert you to it because it's going to affect your money. See, you and I have to pay taxes. We have to pay interest on the debt. We have to pay for all the entitlements and expenses that our government says they're going to pay. But if you were going to count to 1 million, just get your head wrapped around this. If you're going to count to 1 million, how long do you think it would take you to count to 1 million? How many days? You can go ahead and start. I'll just wait. I won't. Okay. It takes 11 and a half days to count to 1 million. So quick question. How long do you think it takes to count to 1 billion? Okay, from 1 million to 1 billion. Now, we got billionaires, right? How long do you think it would take in seconds to count to 1 billion? All right, for those of you doing maths, just stop, okay? The guess is this. Well, the fact is this. It's 32 years of seconds to get to 1 billion. Well, a trillion is huge. 32,000 years of seconds. I mean, right? That should blow your mind. It should go, how in the world is that number that big? And guys, we've got 23 trillion dollars of this debt right now, and we've got another 70 trillion of unfunded promises. Ever heard of Social Security? Medicare? Medicaid? I mean, guys, the problem is out of control. And why I'm trying to ring the bell on this, been trying to ring it since the 1980s, is this. We are in a debt-based money system, and our dollars are going to continue to buy less and less and less because they keep printing more and more and more. As that goes, our government continues to increase the taxes that they have to collect. And they're only going to collect it from two groups of people. And if you're listening to this, you're probably one of them. It's the people that make money and the people that save money. If you're an income earner, or if you save money, especially if you're saving money in tax me later plans. Now, guys, I know I'm hitting a nerve here with a bunch of you because most people are told they should maximize their 401ks. They should save in IRAs. If you save money in an IRA or a SEP plan or a simple plan, you're actually saving money on the taxes, right? That's what so many people believe. In fact, I've got CPAs that tell people this, and I just go, hey, time out. Time out. Are you saving money by delaying a tax? I'm telling you, if you look at what the tax rates have been in our nation's history since 1913, the income tax rates, if you would see what they've done, do you think that they've went up over time? Do you think it's possible that we may have higher taxes in our future? If you do, I'm just telling you, these trillions of dollars of debt are going to start ringing home, and they're going to start ringing true in your home. So how do we actually protect our wealth? This next segment that I'm going to go to is really defining the problems that I've found in working with hundreds and hundreds of clients, because it's these 6 problems that I'm going to identify that you're going to need to learn how to avoid. I'm looking forward to that next segment. Thank you.